Hey, it's Kappy, and this is Beyond the Plate Heard, the audio newsletter where I share what's on my plate literally and figuratively. From culinary insights to restaurants and recipes, it's everything that I'm seeing, tasting, and talking about in just a few minutes. It's not a peer-reviewed culinary journal, it's just my take on what I'm into at the moment. So let's dive in, and I hope you all take something from my plate. First up is Ramen del Barrio in Austin, Texas. Okay, Ramen del Barrio is a Japanese-Mexican fusion restaurant from Chef Chris Krinsky, and this recommendation actually came from an Austin police officer that I know who's really into food. So basically, when he mentions a place to me, I always add it to my Austin list to make sure I go next time I'm there. Ramen del Barrio originally started in a food hall and now has its own brick and mortar location, and the menu looks really good. Couple things that immediately caught my attention. There was a carnitas tonkatsu ramen, which sounded incredible, a mole style ramen, and then there was this whole section called yaki tacos that I saw, which seems to be like the Japanese style yakitori skewers, but served on a corn tortilla. Those sounded real good. I feel like 20 years ago, when you heard the word fusion, it could really sound or be gimmicky, but when it's done right with some actual thought or inspiration behind it on why the flavors and techniques can go together, it can be really delicious. You can find all the links and handles I mentioned in the show notes. Next up is Good Sam Foods. Okay, Good Sam Foods is a food company that sells better-for-you snacks made with simple, regeneratively grown ingredients that come directly from small farms. Think mainly nuts, fruit, coffee, and chocolate. Good Sam works with farmers across more than 8 countries, and essentially they remove a lot of the middlemen by building these long-term relationships directly with small farms. Their website says they know the farmers by name and invest in their land and, quite frankly, their livelihoods. And I can tell you firsthand, that's not just jargon on a website. So check this out. A few months ago, I was at a food summit and randomly sat across the table the first morning at a breakfast from a woman named Heather. She happens to be the founder and CEO of Good Sam. She started telling this story, which immediately got my attention because she had recently returned from the Peruvian Amazon and she was visiting some of the farmers that they work with. And this wasn't just we flew to Peru and drove to a farm and shook someone's hand and left. I mean, this story involved like multiple airplanes, I think boats, hiking for hours, all to get to this specific farmer and community. I believe this one was for Brazil nuts, if I'm not mistaken, which, by the way, Brazil nuts can take you down a whole other rabbit hole. Not to digress too much, but they grow wild in the Amazon and are collected after they fall from these massive trees onto the forest floor. And Good Sam actually describes theirs as being hand-gathered in the Amazon rainforest. Brazil nuts also happen to be one of the richest food sources of selenium, a mineral your thyroid needs to function properly, and that also plays a role in protecting your cells. But only 1 or 2 Brazil nuts can give you plenty of selenium for the day. So this is definitely not a grab a handful and more is better situation. Anyhow, there is a lot more to the Good Sam story, but if food systems and regenerative agriculture or simply like knowing where your food comes from is your thing, check out Good Sam. It's a really meaningful company doing some very cool work. You can find all the links and handles that I mentioned in the show notes. Next up is a recipe I've made a few times now for a group. It's a sheet pan buttermilk jammy pancake. I think I originally found this in a tasting table newsletter about breakfast recipes for a crowd or something like that. And this one caught my eye. It's basically all the ingredients of a pancake batter, but instead of standing over the stove, like flipping a bunch of pancakes, you pour the whole thing onto a small sheet pan and then you dollop some jam over the top and swirl it like with a toothpick or skewer, and then you bake it. It's really good. This recipe is solid. It was really flavorful. It was moist. It was really easy to serve, and it was the crowd pleaser. So it says it feeds around 6 people. You could probably feed 8 or 10, depending on what else you're serving. And then they have you make this maple butter that gets brushed all over the top, which is a nice little addition. Like I said, I've made this a couple times now, and I will definitely be making it again. Apparently, my family is just on a little pancake kick lately because we had a breakfast for dinner night the other night, and I found a container of malted milk powder that was in my cabinet and made malted pancakes, which was also a really nice change. Ooh, maybe I should put that malt powder in the sheet pan pancake next time. Anyhow, if you're feeding a group and don't want to stand at the stove forever flipping pancakes, try this out. I will drop a link to Tasting Table's sheet pan buttermilk jammy pancake in the show notes. Next up on the social impact front is actually a TED Talk from Paul Newnham. You've probably heard me talk about beans quite a bit here lately. Not my favorite food in the world, but I very, very much enjoy them. I think they're really good in so many applications, super versatile, and I've quite frankly become fascinated with what Paul and some of these other organizations are doing around beans. Within the past year, just so you know who Paul is, he's a CEO of an organization called SDG2 Advocacy Hub, and I came across him through one of their many initiatives. This one was called the Chef's Manifesto when they held a small summit here in Chicago, which now that I mention this, I realize I talked about the Chef's Manifesto after I attended it. Anyhow, they are behind this campaign called Beans is How, hence some of my bean fascination lately. And Paul's one of those people who seems to be rallying others from all over the world every day, from nonprofits and farmers and chefs and advocates and people working across agriculture and sustainability and hunger and nutrition. He just knows a lot of people in this space. Okay, so Paul recently gave a TED Talk about the Beans is How campaign. And the basic idea is that beans are this incredibly simple, affordable food that can actually play a role in addressing some pretty massive global health and climate challenges. Not going to spoil the whole talk for you because it's really worth watching. It's pretty eye-opening, but I will link to Paul's TED Talk in the show notes. Next up is skirt steak, and quite frankly, how to slice it. Look, there's no rules to these things, but this should really be a 15-second, one last thing at the end of this episode. But unfortunately, I need to vent / share some more information / give it its own space here. I have an ongoing skirt steak message thread with Chef Adam Mesnick, who's the owner of Deli Board in San Francisco. He was a podcast guest on Beyond the Plate. Adam and I have had multiple conversations and unfortunately, regularly send each other social media posts from the world of skirt steak, mostly because we just don't understand what people aren't getting about slicing it against the grain. And yes, there are chefs and major media publications that are slicing it the wrong way. We have evidence. I'm a huge skirt steak fan. I grew up eating it. It's not like an everyday thing for me, but it's probably my number 1 or 2 cut of beef if I were to choose a steak. I just enjoy it. And funny enough, I've had 2 other ongoing skirt steak text conversations with friends in the past couple weeks. So I figured maybe this is a sign that we need to talk about skirt steak. A couple quick things that I've told people on my text thread. 1, I think skirt steak is one of those cuts where it's worth paying a little more for good quality beef. And 2, when I get one of those really long pieces, which that's skirt steak, most of them come really long, I like to cut it into 6-inch sections before cooking it so I can cook the thinner pieces together and the thicker pieces together. This is personal preference. I feel like it gives me a little more control over the doneness. But back to the entire reason for this mini rant, skirt steak can be tough. So when it's time to slice it, look at the direction of the muscle fibers. Look at the direction they're running. They all run across the short way, and cut across those, not with them. Against the grain, people. That is it. Next up is a really cool wine series that I highly suggest you check out if you're into wine. It's called The Back Label with Paul K. It's actually on YouTube, and I have known Paul Kalamkarian for years, goes by Paul K. He happens to be related to one of the producers of this podcast, and Paul is a second-generation owner of the original Wine of the Month Club. there are many. This is the original. It's the oldest continuously operating mail order wine club in the US. Paul is incredibly knowledgeable and incredibly connected through the wine world. He also hosts a podcast called Wine Talks with Paul K. And fun fact, Paul has tasted more than 100,000 wines. Yes, 100,000. Anyhow, I wanted to give a quick shout out to his new YouTube series, The Back Label. I started diving into it a little bit recently, and it's really beautiful. They shot it really nicely, and it kind of has that like Bourdain travel show feeling to it, but for wine. You're getting places he's going, the people and stories behind the wines. It's pretty cool. If you're into wine or even just the culture and people around it, check it out. As always, I will share a link in the show notes. And one last thing before I leave you. I heard this crazy stat about dishwashers the other day, and it kind of blew my mind. So I don't know if it's going to be as intriguing to you as it was to me, but here I go. Check this out. A new water-efficient dishwasher uses the same amount of water for an entire cycle as running your kitchen sink for only about 2 minutes. Am I the only person who didn't know this? I started looking into this a little more, and I was finding that an Energy Star dishwasher uses 3.2 gallons of water or less for a full cycle. And depending on your kitchen sink or faucet, you can blow through that much water in like a couple minutes. So that dishwasher running for a couple hours is using roughly the amount of water you might use standing at your sink for a couple minutes. I don't know why, but that completely changed the way I think about running the dishwasher. Anyhow, I suppose I will now stop feeling guilty about loading the dishwasher. Thanks for listening to Heard, a production of Beyond the Plate. You can find all the links and handles I mentioned in the show notes. If you liked this, then tap the follow button and tune in for more Heard, where I share what I'm seeing, tasting, and loving lately in food and hospitality. And if your family and friends may enjoy it, I hope you'll share it with them. Until next time.